What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today bringing the second round portion of the updated 2023 NFL mock. If you missed round one, definitely go back and start there. It came out yesterday. So before we get started in the round two portion of this mock, I'm going to go ahead and showcase the best players still on the board. But before we get started, like if you enjoyed today's video, subscribe if you're new and want more mock draft content and more draft content in general in your life. And of course, be sure to give me your feedback down below in the comment section. I respond to just about every comment, or at least look at it and give it a heart, a like, something like that. I'll interact with you the best that I can, the most that my time allows me to. But let me hear your thoughts, whether you like the pick, don't like it, or kind of mid on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and maybe your favorite direction for your favorite team to go in with that said selection. So with all that down, let's go ahead and jump into it, starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 32. This has been one of my favorite picks, and I would love to see this because Anton Harrison is my top three offensive tackle. He comes in at number 3. And for Pittsburgh, Dan Moore just has not worked out. This is an immediate upgrade there. And then you can have a little bit of a camp battle with Dan Moore against Chukwuma Okorafor there at the right tackle spot. So I think this is the type of move that Pittsburgh needs to make. Yeah, they could sure address interior offensive line, but honestly, I think the tackle spot's a little more glaring. Dan Moore to me is the guy that needs to go. He's the weakest link of the 5. And when that weakest link plays left tackle, that becomes a massive need and something you need to fix. And they want to give him a couple years, and a lot of times offensive linemen take that leap forward in year 3, year 4. So I could see them using that as motivation to not move on from Dan Moore, but I think they should. And Anton Harrison, a guy who 3-year starter, ton of pass blocking snaps under his belt. This is the guy who could be a plug-and-play starter there as a bookend left tackle. Don't need to see any more Kenny Pickett rolling out right because he's evading pressure, right? Then we get to the Houston Texans. Will McDonald's going to be the selection here. Fringe round 1, early round 2 type of guy for me. Speed rusher. Iowa State had him lined up on the interior, I think, way too much. So I think at the NFL level, having him outside of tackles, playing that 3-4 outside linebacker spot, maybe Houston's not necessarily the perfect fit for that. So they could go with a different edge rusher here, but I'm kind of waiting to see, more of what they think that scheme's going to look like. But even as, you get in a nickel and dime, you're passing, your pass rushing, passing situations, your 4-man front can still have Will McDonald, against a left tackle. And it's still going to be playing on a wider alignment than he did at Iowa State. So I think this is a guy who's just going to be a better pro because of the position he's playing in, and prototypical speed rusher, 6'3", right around 240 pounds, can attack the outside shoulder at a high level. So him and Derek Hall kind of very similar to me, and I could totally see them going kind of in a similar spot in the draft. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to go ahead and go cornerback here. I've been going interior offensive line heavy here at 34, so I want to change it up a little bit. Go with corner because I also think of that as a massive need, especially now with Vance Joseph not being the defensive coordinator. I think he's been able to squeeze a lot out of a little there. And now that he's gone, I think those holes on the defensive side are going to be that much more glaring. Granted, you do have Jonathan Gannon coming in as the head coach, and figure to see him as the DC too, or as the play caller at least. So should be in okay shape there, but let's go ahead and add some, reinforcements to that secondary. No guarantee they bring back Byron Murphy, so this could be Emmanuel Forbes is I need this guy to be the headline corner. Ideally, perfect situation. Byron Murphy's back because he's one of my favorite corners. He's still in his mid-20s, so I really like Murphy a ton. He's played well there in Arizona, so if you get him back, plus you drafted Emmanuel Forbes here at the top of the second round, 3 years worth of starting experience, a ton of ball production at Mississippi State, then you start looking at that boundary corner spot, and it's like, okay, the secondary is coming along. Plus, you have Budda Baker. You still have Jalen Thompson, too. So there's other pieces in the mix there that make you start to look at that secondary and say, okay, yeah, need to fix the pass rush, but we went Will Anderson yesterday. Now let's go and double down on that defense with Emmanuel Forbes at 34. Then we get to the Chicago Bears. I'm going to go offensive lineman Darnell Wright in this spot. I think an immediate upgrade there at right tackle. He was fantastic after he switched from left tackle to right tackle. I think part of that's being, propped up by, a really good offensive system and Josh Heupel. And, it's kind of like the air raid and how all of a sudden Arizona Cardinals tackles started to look really, really good. And part of it's the system kind of keeping them clean. But, hey, however you get it, the production was there. Good size. And I do think he has the capability of moving back to left tackle, but certainly looked a lot better on tape as a right tackle. So I think for Chicago, you keep Braxton Jones, who I think a solid story as a 5th-round pick. You keep him there at left tackle. Darnell Wright then slots in at the right tackle spot. Much better pass protector than what they have in place right now with Larry Borom, and that will certainly make Justin Fields, assuming that they're rolling with Justin Fields, but we traded the number 1 pick. So my mindset in this mock draft is Fields going to be under center, and this is a pick that will make Fields that much better, keeping him clean in the pocket. Next, we get to the Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to go B.J. Ojulari here. This, to me, is one of my favorite fits, player at a team destination, because he is one of these, could go late 1, could go early 2 type of guys, and I think he gets the opportunity to go to a contender and play some meaningful football right away. He's not necessarily the best run defender, but you have Aaron Donald in the middle of that defense. Sure, maybe a little bit of a down year last year, missed some time because of injury, but he's still Aaron Donald at his best. Plus, I figure they're going to bring back Greg Gaines and Leonard Floyd. Maybe not the best pass rusher, and maybe not worth $20 million a year against the cap, but he is a pretty good run defender with some moments where he's a solid pass rusher. So I think Ojulari is kind of a pass rush specialist. That's what he's on this roster to do. Make the life of Aaron Donald easier and let Leonard Floyd kind of be the guy who stops the run at a high level and then gets some pass rush production out of him where you can. And then Ojulari is the specialist. He is the pass rusher off the edge. I think that fit makes a ton of sense. I really like him as that speed rusher too, because that just feels like the guy they don't have right now. And that's Von Miller brought a lot of value to that team in their Super Bowl run, but specifically as a speed rusher and that force multiplier effect that guy can have. I think B.J. Ojulari kind of brings that finesse rusher type, and then hopefully kind of brings that force multiplier effect with another solid edge in the mix for the Rams. Then we get to Seattle at 37. I'm going to go Siaki Ika. He's a tough guy to kind of mock because I've had him go in the first round and I've had him go as late as pretty late round 2. But a player I like a ton, and I mean pairing him up with Myles Murphy, who we took in the first round at 9 after a trade back from 5. Man, you're adding some serious beef to that defensive line. They're going to certainly stop the run a lot better clip. Siaki Ika, almost 360 pounds. Maybe didn't always play like it, didn't hold the line of scrimmage like you would expect a 360 pounder. But I think that's Baylor. I mean, I just don't think they're coaching him to I don't think they're coaching them the same as Alabama's coaching a Byron Young, basically. That's what I'm trying to get at. And also, Baylor is not known for developing defensive tackles, so, take it with a grain of salt, in my opinion. But he does, off of that 360-pound frame, figures to be a guy that can hold the line of scrimmage better at the NFL level, but he also has a couple of really nice finesse pass rush moves. He's got a good spin. He's got a nice spin and swim to go with it. So, interesting prospect when you look at the pass rush upside on top of someone that big and someone that strong. So, I'm fascinated by him. I think early round 2 is kind of a nice spot for him to go. And then for Seattle, potential Poona Ford replacement here. I think Al Woods is getting up there in age too, past 30, and I think he's under contract for another year, maybe 2. So no matter what, however you spend it, this is your future interior defensive lineman moving forward for Seattle, and you pair him up with Myles Murphy. All of a sudden, you're a much better run defense than where you were, especially the back half of last regular season. Then we get to the Raiders. I'm going to go Drew Sanders here. I would love this. The Raiders have been looking for an inside linebacker for what feels like my entire lifetime, but certainly over the last half decade to a decade. So get him a guy who's just an absolute twitchy athlete. Plus, Patrick Graham, the DC, comes from that, Bill Belichick, tree. So blitzing linebackers is something you kind of naturally kind of associate with that. So, whether it's Sanders going to Minnesota at 23 or falling to the Raiders here at 38, Flores and Patrick Graham, again, Bill Belichick disciples. So I could see Sanders being a logical fit, and I could see him going anywhere from that 23 to 38 spot. He could go after this too, for sure. But I think right here at 38, this is a value that the Raiders should not pass up on. Next is the Carolina Panthers. We're going to go Andre Carter II. This is a pick that I have made a ton. I just want a different body type. Like if I was going best edge available, it'd probably be Derek Hall. But, Brian Burns is a little bit more slight, a little bit more of a pass rush specialist, not much in the way of a high-level run defender. And if you add Derek Hall, I think you're kind of getting another guy who's, light when it comes to his weight, can get kind of pushed around in the run game. So it kind of leaves you a little weak stopping the run there on the edge. So go get a guy who's 260 pounds and 6'7", has freakishly long arms, and also a power rusher. I think is a nice compliment with Burns on the other side being the speed finesse guy. So it's just kind of a pairing I think makes a ton of sense. Kind of balances out the defensive line, both in regards to weight, but in regards to how these guys win in their pass rush sets. So I think that allows you to play mix match against opposing tackles and get the most advantageous matchup for you in that defense. So I'd love to see that pick there at 39. Let me get to the Saints, and here at 40, I'm going to go Kalijah Kancey. So we went wide receiver in round 1, and now you get a lot of people's number 2 interior defensive line men in this class. People have him over Ryan Brzee, which I understand. They're just different guys, and I think the timetable is also different. Like Kalijah Kancey to me is a much higher floor but lower ceiling guy than Brian Brzee. So I don't really think it's fair to compare those guys as if they're apples, but it's apples to oranges for sure. But this is a guy for the Saints. They're going to want to be pretty good next year, I think. We'll see what the quarterback situation plays out. That's going to be the ultimate indicator there. But assuming they are trying to win immediately, Kalijah Kancey, I think, can help you do that right away. Whether David Onyemata is back or not, He's more of a run defender, so even if he's back, cool. Then Kancey and him make a perfect duo there in the middle. And if not, you're still looking for a run defender. But Kancey at 6'1", right around 280 pounds. This dude has great get off on the line, knows how to be he's just like where we talk about Myles Murphy, Brian Brzee, those guys are learning how to be pass rushers. Kalijah Kancey's ready to roll. Like that guy at the NFL level can make an impact pretty much right away. So again, it goes back to the argument: do you want a guy that's high floor, maybe lower ceiling like a Kancey, or do you want a guy that has a way lower floor than Brian Brzee, but also, if all works out, his ceiling is a lot higher because he could be a high level run defender plus a freak pass rusher too. So give and take, but I think for the Saints to get the guy who can help you win right away and give you that interior pass rush help they've been looking for, I think that goes a long way. And we're actually going to stick on the defensive line in tomorrow's video as well. Next, the Tennessee Titans. Jalin Hyatt, a pick I've made plenty of times before. I think of him more as a round 2 guy than I do round 1. But I know a lot of people are excited about Jalin Hyatt as a first rounder. I've seen comps from Will Fuller to plenty of other speedsters. I'm just not quite there with Jalin Hyatt. I feel like I'm a little bit lower on him than most. Again, part of it's the Josh Heupel offense. We kind of talked about with Darnell Wright, maybe kept him safe, but Hyatt I think had a lot of inflated production because of that offense. And the route tree wasn't expansive. He kind of had a defined role, and that's what it was. We'll talk about the other Tennessee wide receiver, Cedric Tillman, in tomorrow's video, and kind of have some of the same complaints about him. But nonetheless, there should be something to be excited about. Let's get him in a new role and a new offense and ask him to do more. And if he takes a quick learning to it, that's when he gets scary. So to me, it's kind of it depends upon how quick he can add to his route tree. If he can't, then he becomes De'Ami Brown. And if he can, then okay, Jalin Hyatt can become a force. So for Tennessee, it's like, you just cut Robert Woods. Hyatt could play in the slot, or he could play out wide. And to add that over-the-top speed on top of Treylon Burks, their first rounder from last year, and a grounded pound, Derrick Henry's our identity, that type of an offense, the play-action game with Jalin Hyatt getting behind defenses, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I'd love to see this pick. And I think here at 41, that's where I'm like, all right, I can see Jalin Hyatt being worth pick 41. Browns are on the clock at 42. I'm going to go interior defensive line. I've gone back and forth between wide receiver and IDL, and whichever one I go here with at 42, I will do the opposite at 98. So Keanu Benton, to me, maybe the best pure nose tackle in this class. I mean, Jalen Carter to me, probably more of a 3-4 DN who, depending on your scheme, he could play nose, and I'm not going to be upset about it. But then, Siaki Ika, Keanu Benton, which one of those guys do you like more? Kind of varies based on who you talk to. Benton, to me, a much better run defender, at least what we've seen on tape right away. Certainly a better run defender at the college level than Siaki Ika. A little bit less weightage, and I think you're going to get a little bit less as a pass rusher than Ika. But for the Browns, dude, they've just had a putrid interior defensive line group over the last couple of years, specifically when it comes to stopping the run. They have been abysmal in the middle of that defense, interior defensive line and linebacker. They have been inept at being able to stop the run. Keanu Benton can change that pretty quickly. So this feels like the perfect spot for Benton. Feels like the perfect addition for the Browns to make here at 42. Next is the New York Jets. And I kind of mentioned this with another pick yesterday where I saw it in a different mock and I was like, damn it, somebody beat me to it. But Daiyan Henley, man, to get that type of speed and range and that type of an athlete in the middle of a zone-heavy defense for Robert Saleh, you don't want to call him the next Fred Warner, but he could play that role. And because he's such a twitched-up athlete, he'll get blocked out of plays because he's only about 6'2", 230. But because he's such a twitched-up athlete, you can live with it. Because that dude in coverage and having him drop back in the zone against opposing passing attacks, he can bring a lot of value there. So a guy that looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl, you kind of saw him flying around the field. You saw the coverage upside. So I think this makes a ton of sense. Ideally, you can restructure and rework a deal, maybe get to an agreement on a pay cut with C.J. Mosley, because I think Henley and Mosley's strengths and weaknesses kind of perfectly aligned to make a really nice duo there in the middle. But if they ultimately part ways with C.J. Mosley, then the linebacker need becomes that much more glaring. And there's not many needs on that Jets defense as is, but linebacker is one. But especially if they move on from C.J. Mosley, then I'd love to see them get a guy like Henley here at 43. Or Sanders if he falls, or Simpson if he falls as far as Simpson specific. That would be awesome. Next is the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm going to just go OP here, and I'm going to go Darnell Washington. Now, before you click off the video, Falcons fans, hear me out. Man, this would, one, allow you to do that much more cool stuff with Kyle Pitts, and at this point, you could basically make him a full-time wide receiver, which I'm here for if they want to do that. Or you get into some crazy two tight end sets with Darnell Washington, who's essentially an extension of your offensive line, which, by the way, Keelan McGarry, a free agent this year, so we'll see what their needs are at right tackle. Maybe they go offensive line somewhere in the first 2 rounds. I can see that. But maybe they're able to keep him around and do Darnell Washington and an offense, and specifically that run scheme that Arthur Smith dials up, where those guys are out moving a ton. Darnell Washington at 6'7", 260 moves well for that size and has legitimate pass blocking wins against guys like B.J. Ojulari, who we've already had come off the board in this mock, and Gervon Dexter, who I think goes top 100. those are legit wins. Like, there are not tight ends that you say that about. So adding Darnell Washington to that scheme, that type of run blocking ability, dude, Tyler Algier, if you're playing Dynasty, if this were a pick, draft Tyler Algier, because that man running off tackle with Darnell Washington leading the way is going to be OP. But again, getting back to my original point here, okay, you have Washington be the full-time tight end, but then you can get really cheeky and go 2 tight end, under center stuff with Pitts and Washington on the field. And because of how good that run scheme is and how good of a run blocker Darnell Washington is, defenses are going to have to respect it. So then that play action, Kyle Pitts against a linebacker, Kyle Pitts against a safety, yeah, good luck with that nonsense because it ain't going to work. Or you, again, just move Kyle Pitts full-time to wide receiver, him and Drake London play on the outside to figure out the slot later on. So no matter how you spin it, I'm in love with this pick. And now, it's probably just a luxury addition here because the Falcons defense needs a lot of work, and if they're going to draft, a position player, someone to help out that ecosystem around Desmond Ridder, speed wide receiver makes a lot of sense as opposed to another tight end. But nonetheless, man, I feel like you add Darnell Washington to that team, and that offense gets scary because of how many different things they could do and how they could build one layer on top of another with the addition of Washington. So would love to see it. Don't know how realistic it is, but man, that would be super fun. Then the Packers at 45. I'm actually going to stick at the tight end position. This is a good tight end class. We're going to see a lot of guys, and this Washington, Musgrave, and then Kincaid is going to come off the board in a little bit too. This is a good tight end room. Like, there's going to be a lot of names flying off the board. I could see multiple tight ends round 1. I could certainly see multiple going round 2. So Luke Musgrave, certainly an upgrade over Robert Tonyan, and it's just an athlete they don't have at the tight end position. And honestly, Marcedes Lewis, Robert Tonyan, I can't think of a tight end with this type of athletic profile that the Packers have had in some time, and I'd really have to think about it. But Musgrave looked really good at the Senior Bowl, which was big because he missed a huge portion of the season at Oregon State. But the 2 games he did play, plus the Senior Bowl, showcased a good size, 6'5", 260, maybe 250. High-end athlete, really moves well for his size. May not be the sharpest route runner, but he can run away from linebackers and safeties. And especially, when you talk about safeties, he's 6'5". He can out-muscle those guys too. So he becomes a true mismatch type of weapon. May not have the football IQ of a Michael Mayer to sit in a soft spot of zone, but that comes with some time. I think he can develop that part into his game. And if it is going to be Jordan Love, I think adding one more legitimate pass catcher in the mix is going to be a necessity. And we know Green Bay is not going to do it round 1 unless they're like, hey, well, now Aaron Rodgers is gone. Now we kind of have to. I could see maybe their hands forced then. But if they do go tight end round 2, you're talking about Christian Watson, you're talking about Romeo Doubs, whoever that tight end is. That's a nice, stable situation for Jordan Love to try to work through. And it's also a young, cheap core, which cannot be understated for this team who, is going to continue to try to be a threat there in the NFC North. And if Love looks as good as he did in that, second half or that fourth quarter against the Eagles, all right, maybe, just maybe, they can continue to be playoff contenders. Let's talk about the New England Patriots at pick 46. I'm going to go Tank Dell here. A little bit of a different selection. I've been going Quentin Johnson the first round, last couple of mocks. We go off the tackle this time around. And Tank Dell, inside-out versatility, so this could be your Jacoby Myers replacement. Or if you bring back Myers, this could be your Nelson Aguilar, because Aguilar almost certainly going to be cut if he's not already just a true free agent. This could be your Nelson Aguilar replacement there on the outside. So I think no matter what, he's a replacement for someone who you're moving on from, and it brings that immediate impact. Very twitchy after the catch, and I make this joke all the time, but it's not really a joke. Marcus Jones is their most dynamic player and receiver with the ball in his hands, and he's their punt returner / slot corner. So we got to change that. Tank Dell adds that dynamism to this offense and add that into that wide receiver room. And also a guy who brings that long speed, and I think paired up with Tyquan Thornton, that creates kind of like going back to what we were talking about with Tennessee. It's like, hey, well, this team's they're going to do a fair amount of running the ball, right? Like, it's going to be a lot of Ramondre Stevens. It's going to be a lot of Damon Harris. And then, Bill O'Brien, when he wants to pick those opportunities right, the over-the-top speed of Tyquan Thornton and Tank Dell becomes something that really is difficult for opposing defenses to try to contain and take into account. So I would love to see this fit. And again, inside-out versatility, he's a replacement for either Aguilar or Jacoby Myers, which makes that fit that much better. And I think right here in the middle of the second round, supreme value for how good Tank Dell is. Then we get to the Washington Commanders once more. Not necessarily in love with this pick. If you're a Washington fan, let me know how you would feel about it. I'm thinking Cody Mock, ideally as an Andrew Norwell replacement. Maybe Trey Turner at right guard, either way. And then maybe in a couple years' time, he takes some steps forward and he can become a tackle of the future. If you go Mock, I think this does keep Sam Cosmi at right tackle, where I think he should be. But I know there's a lot of Washington fans who kind of are more optimistic about Cosmi if he were to move inside to play guard. So it comes down to your opinion on him and where he was as a prospect coming out of Texas. I like him at tackle. I think Mock, again, kind of features in as that left guard of the immediate future. And then long term, maybe could be the replacement of Charles Leno. So intrigued by the upside. High-end athlete, flies around the field, really good run blocker too, which was ultimately kind of the final piece of the puzzle for me. I was like, yeah, Ron Rivera is going to want a high-end blocker, so let's go get a run blocker, that is. Let's go get Cody Mauch, because I feel like that's someone that Ron Rivera will just love to have in his offense. Brings that value. They want to run the ball a ton, so Cody Mauch, I think, makes a lot of sense there. But again, also long-term, could be that Charles Leno replacement. So 47 feels a little rich for where I like him, but nonetheless, because of his athletic ability and kind of what his upside is, top 50 is probably more likely than not. Then we get to the Lions at 48. Going to continue to take in Jack Campbell in this spot. I just think this is a great spot for him to go. And honestly, man, the closer we get to Indy, the more I'm starting to think maybe he's not as lackluster of an athlete, for lack of a better term, as we maybe thought. Like, maybe he does run an okay 40. Like, maybe he isn't as slow and lumbersome and like old school linebacker. Like, if you dropped this dude in 2004, he's Zach Thomas. Like, I'm convinced he's just Zach Thomas. But maybe he has, enough mobility and explosiveness and enough athletic ability in general to be able to be a 3-down linebacker. If not, dude, pair him up with Malcolm Rodriguez. That's a awesome 1-2 duo. They're on early downs, because the weaknesses of Rodriguez, given he's a little smaller and much better athlete, more of a coverage guy, Jack Campbell makes up for those weaknesses by being a high-level run defender, can fill those lanes, and basically with the plays in front of him, he's really, really good. It's just when he gets into coverage, because of his athletic limitations maybe that might be there, he could be a concern. He might be a liability there. So that's where Malcolm Rodriguez's strengths are kind of perfectly aligned with his weaknesses. So I'd love to see this pairing. I've done this a ton in mocks. Sorry, Lions fans, but you're going to continue to see it, because I think this is the right spot for them to go, and I think it's a good value there at 48. Then we get the Steelers at 49. This was one that I deliberated on good bit. I'm going to go Mozzie Smith, upside play, ideally a replacement for Tyson Alualu and Matrevius Adams there at nose tackle. Pittsburgh's been kind of hit and miss when it comes to stopping the run, and I'm going to say something that's really bold here. They're a much better team when they stop the run at a high level. So I know that blows your mind, but I think making the investment at nose tackle makes a lot of sense. 6'3", 340 pounds is Mozzie Smith. Number one guy on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. So there's a ton to be excited about. There's a ton to like about Mozzie Smith. It just kind of always came in flashes. Never consistent. Never for a full game either, it felt like. So when you see it, it's like, okay, this guy should be a top 50 pick, because, oh my God, not many people that size move that way and bring that strength to it too. But there's also moments where it's like, dude, where'd Mozzie Smith go? Where's he at? Is he even on the field? So that's where I would have to just hope Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin can work their magic and get that consistency ironed out in his game. But it is a worthwhile project, because, they're getting a little old in the interior defensive line. I know they took to Marvin Leal in the 3rd round last year. I'm kind of expecting him to be the Larry Ogunjobi replacement at that 3-4 DN spot. And then this, type of selection, Mozzie Smith becomes your nose tackle of the immediate future, ideally, but certainly the long-term future. So I like that investment there for Pittsburgh in a position that they have to address eventually. So then we get to Tampa at pick 50. Let's go Deonte Banks. Tall, lanky, athletic corner. I think could, plenty of mocks have him go in the 1st round. I think that's certainly live and as a true possibility of happening. But here in the 2nd round, I mean, great value here for Tampa. Replacement for Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy Bunting. They potentially could lose both those guys. I'd like to see them keep Dean, but depending on what happens at quarterback, they might just go full rebuild and go tank heavy in 2023. So could totally see that happening, and therefore big need there on the outside. Deonte Banks, I think, presents the best value here at 50. Then we get to Miami at 51. This is where I have Dalton Kincaid come off the board. It's not necessarily as great of a fit as I would have loved. Like last week I had Darnell Washington, but I don't think Washington makes it outside the top 50 if I'm honest. Kincaid not as good of a blocker, I think, as a Musgrave, but part of that is like he's 6'3", 235, 240 versus 6'5", 250 that Musgrave is. So part of it I'm basing it off of his size and his frame. Maybe he is a better blocker in a system like this where you're running that zone scheme, wide zone scheme in specific, and he is a good athlete to where it's like, hey, Kincaid, get to this spot. That's all I need you to do. If you get to this spot, meet that guy first. You don't need to bulldoze him. You don't need to be George Kittle pancaking fools. I just need you to get to the spot, make this contact, and let our running back make the right adjustment or hit the hole, use their vision. We're going down a hypothetical here. I'm going to cut it off there. But nonetheless, Kincaid as a receiver, that's where this gets interesting, because he can line up in line and be kind of what Mike McDaniel wants out of a prototypical tight end. May not be a high-end blocker, but adding his receiving ability and run after the catch ability in an offense that already features Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, okay, I'm here for it. And especially when I think about his yards after the catch ability, teams started making an adjustment against Miami where they would just drop linebackers 15, 20 yards deep. And that would take away that over-the-middle throw in timing to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Like, that was a huge part of that offense. You saw that RPO at least like 5 times a game. where it's just timing based. Tua's going to throw it over the middle of the field. Waddle or Hill's going to be there. But then teams started dropping linebackers in that zone and kind of took it away. Well, Dalton Kincaid as like a guy who takes tight end screens and can just make a catch at 5 yards and then say, hey, come on, bring it on, tackle me. I'm kind of a truck, so good luck. No, non-intended rhyme there. I was fired though. But anyways, getting back on track, I think his role and that ability to be the yards after the catch guy, even if it's just a short, we're not asking you to do much beyond the line of scrimmage, but catch this and force linebackers back up close to the line of scrimmage. That brings so much value because if you get linebackers creeping up in that 10 to 12 yard range, then that throw 20 yards down the field that we saw Tua make a ton this season to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill is open again. So I could see specifically that part of his game being a huge value added to Miami. Then we get to Seattle at pick 52. I'm going to go John Michael Schmitz here. Best center in the class, so I think you got the best guard, you got the best center. Patching up that interior offensive line, you got a left guard replacement, you got a center upgrade. Also, I think John Michael Schmitz comes with guard center flexibility, so maybe he isn't your center of the future, maybe he's your right guard of the future. So do think that flexibility is there. 5-year player at Minnesota. I think he's plug and play, ready to go, ready to be an NFL starter at the next level, which I think also brings a lot of value to Seattle. Then we get to Chicago at 53. I'm going to go Josh Downs here. Not quite the wide receiver that I love, but he is the best wide receiver, in my opinion, available here. You play him in the slot. Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, man the outside. Plus you have Velus Jones. Oh my God. Like all those guys are 4.4 speed and lower. So ton of speed. And we added Darnell Wright at 35. So we got a much needed pass protecting upgrade there at right tackle. Adding more speed, adding an awesome yak weapon into this offense. Make the game simple for Justin Fields. Don't let him hold on the ball too long. Get the ball out quick. Let Josh Downs do his thing. I think that makes a lot of sense. But also a guy who sharp route runner in the underneath and intermediate. So maybe not so much intermediate, but the underneath stuff he can get open quick. Like this guy on slant is hard to defend because not many dudes move like him. But also, I think you can stretch the field a little bit with him. It's just probably going to be on like crossing routes. I saw that was how UNC mostly utilized him on throws beyond like 10 yards, which I think is fine. That's the same thing the Packers were doing with Christian Watson second half of last year. And hey, when you're bigger and faster than everyone, Christian Watson was taking full advantage of it. And for Downs, like again, not many people move like Josh Downs. So taking advantage of that speed, he'll run away from defenders. And I think that's where crossing routes deeper down the field, you can incorporate him into that offensive role as well. Chargers at pick 54. I'm going to go Tuli Tuipulotu, goodness gracious, to be that 3-4 pass rusher there on the inside. You have Bosa, you have Mack there, play the edge. 3-4 D-end upgrade here with Tuipulotu. Finding that third pass rusher, I think, will go a long way to make this Chargers defense fully click. Could add another corner for sure, but I like Tuipulotu as a value here at 54. And again, finding that third pass rusher, I think, will help make that coverage unit look better, but I think fully take this defense to where it should be, especially considering Brandon Staley, it's a good defensive mind. So this defense should be exceeding where they have been the last 2 years. Then we get to Detroit once more at pick 55. I'm going to go Jamie Robinson. I'll be going Sidney Brown pretty heavy here. I actually have Robinson ranked as a higher safety. I'm a big fan of Jamie Robinson. Can play free, can play strong, can play nickel. And with Tracy Walker and Deshaun Elliott still there, that type of flexibility, whether it's playing the nickel, playing the box safety role, playing over the top, and especially his experience playing that nickel spot. If they do run big nickel and you have that third safety in the field, I think Jamie Robinson perfectly slots into doing something like that. Same thing with Deshaun Elliott. I think he could play that role as well. So no matter how you spin it, this guy can find a way on the field. He's played so many different roles that no matter what you ask him to do, he can do it. And I think he's an upgrade over the guys they have, if I'm honest. I'm a big Jamie Robinson guy. So big fan of his game and multi-year starter at Florida State too. So a guy who's ready to play right away, in my opinion. So I think that brings a lot of value to that Lions defense. And, now we've gone corner, we've gone interior defensive line, we've gone linebacker, we've gone safety. We're going defensive heavy here for the first 2 rounds for Detroit. Then we get back to the Jacksonville Jaguars, pick 56. I'm going to go DeJuan Jones here. I think Jawan Taylor actually did play pretty well back half of last year. And it's kind of tough. Guy's just now hitting his mid-20s, coming off the best half season he's had of his career. It's like, man, what do I do with that? Like, do I want to be the team that re-signs him? Because I think Jawan Taylor's going to fetch a bag based off of the last half of last season and his age. So I don't know if the Jags will be able to afford him. They're a tricky team. They're over the cap right now. There's going to be some cuts in place for sure. But Evan Ingram, Jawan Taylor, feels like you're going to lose one, if not both those guys. So DeJuan Jones is kind of my insurance policy. If they lose Taylor, let's go ahead and draft that right tackle that balled out the Senior Bowl, was just tossing people around, like Isaiah Foskey, who's 6'4", 260, and Andre Carter, who's 6'7", 260. He's tossing those dudes around like they're rag dolls. So Lots to be excited about with DeJuan Jones. I think he's a little bit of a work in progress. Maybe struggles a little bit against those speed, smaller edge rushers that can get underneath him. But, man, when it comes to being a mover of people, not many tackles in this class as good as DeJuan Jones. Next is the New York Giants at pick 57. This is where I'm going to actually have Cedric Tillman. I thought I had him in tomorrow's video, but instead we're going to have Tillman be a second rounder. This might surprise people. This is one of the guys I'm most excited about once we get into the combine, because he has the size, 6'3", over 200 pounds. And, the way that Tennessee offense works, like, your outside wide receivers are basically along the sideline. And he's great at that stuff. He can be that contested catch, big body guy. And there's not a lot of dudes in this class like that. Thought about Michael Wilson here, but I'm hoping Tillman has a good combine. I'm kind of projecting that he might. And if he does, maybe he kind of gets the bump over Michael Wilson. I also had Tillman Wilson kind of in a similar tier in my wide receiver video. If you missed it, definitely go back and check it out. But I think if you don't ask Tillman to do something he's not, if you ask him to do the role that he had at Tennessee, be a contested catch, work the sideline, make catches outside the numbers, work the sideline, all those sort of stuff, I think he's already good at that. Where I'm hoping there is more room to grow is, like, what is this 3-cone? Like, could this guy do more in the intermediate parts? But, Josh Heupel has a scheme. He asked Jalen Hyatt to do those select things. He asked Cedric Tillman to do those select things. And because of that, we didn't get to see them do more. Or is he incapable at doing those other things? So I'm really excited to see the athletic numbers come in, because if he has an atrocious 3-cone, it's like, all right, well, the reason he wasn't running 10-yard digs and ends, is because he couldn't. He can't turn. So I think we'll find out some more about him. But I'm anticipating he'll actually have a pretty good combine, because I think he moves well. Like, I think there's a good athlete in that body. I just don't think the offense asked him to do anything more than the very specific types of routes that he was running. So I think he can branch out that route tree. It's just going to come down to, let me see those athletic numbers and let me use that as a confirmation to whether I think he can or cannot. But for the Giants, get that big body contested catch guy. I've had Rashee Rice go here. Again, Michael Wilson could make a ton of sense. And honestly, right now, I'd probably have Wilson over Tillman, but I am projecting a good combine from Tillman. Therefore, I'm making him the pick here at 57. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys, and sticking to the wide receiver spot, a guy that not a lot of people are talking about just yet. I'm going to go Tyler Scott. A lot of the same stuff that made Alec Pierce an intriguing prospect from Cincy last year. Really good 40, over 40-inch vertical. Tyler Scott's going to be able to say the same stuff. Scott, I'm hearing, is going to run 4.2. So that is really interesting. Plus a 40-inch plus vertical. Yeah, that is spicy. And, you look at the Cowboys adding T.Y. Hilton midway through last year. I think this is the speed over the top guy they're looking to add. Scott played on the outside at Cincinnati, which to me is a big deal, because I want to keep CeeDee Lamb in the slot for 60 to 70% of his snaps. So if I can get a guy who can play on the outside and let me still do that with Lamb, that's my initiative. That's my prerogative. That's what my number one priority is going to be for wide receiver. And I think Tyler Scott can do that. So he may not be a name you're hearing a whole lot about now, but I definitely think he could start catching some round 2 hype, and just like Alec Pierce last year, find his way somewhere there in the top 60. Bills are next up. I'm going to go Andrew Voorhees, get an immediate upgrade over Roger Saffold, who's also a free agent, but getting a big-time upgrade there at left guard. 5-year player at USC, a plug-and-play, I think is ready to be an NFL starter too. So I think that brings a lot of value to Buffalo, who obviously is a contender. They're looking to win right now, and I think Voorhees helps them with that MO and gives them an upgrade there on the offensive line. Next is the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to go Tyreek Stevenson. Man, this would be just would be a fantastic fit for Lou Anarumo. A guy who, at the Senior Bowl, was dominant as a man press corner. There were not many guys wing off the line against Stevenson, and he did that a lot at Miami. But I also think because he has a good athletic profile and he figures to test pretty well at Indy, 6 foot, right around 190 pounds, maybe a little bit bigger, I think he is more than comfortable and more than flexible enough to be able to play some zone coverage on top of that. So Lou Anarumo is one of those guys who changes it up in game to game. Like, he is so flexible, and he asks his defense to do so many things that I think Stevenson is flexible enough as a corner, but that man press upside is certainly there. And in big situations, I'd love to see them have someone like a Tyreek Stevenson go get a wide receiver with the line of scrimmage and try to end a game right there. So I think he's an awesome addition, and I think a great value here at 60. I mean, he's gone as high as first round and plenty of mocks, so this would be fantastic value here. Next is Seattle. I'm going to go back to it. Kayshon Boutte. I don't know where he's going to go in this draft, man. He could go as late as like day 3. I could see him be a 5th round pick because of the off the field stuff. But when you watch his tape, there's a first round talent there. And you go back 2 years ago, those first 6 games, or first half of the year before his injury, I think he missed 6 games once he went down. But that first half of the year, he was special. Again, it looked like a first rounder in the making. The problem is, then he missed 6 games that year, and then he had a very down year this past season. So it's been a while since we've seen that first round talent. So I think here at 61, this kind of gives Seattle the flexibility and the leeway to go ahead and take a shot. We've accumulated a couple extra second rounders. This was actually the one they got from Carolina. So go ahead and take a shot in the dark. This guy could immediately be that wide receiver 3 upgrade. I think he's better than D. Eskridge, but also a long-term Tyler Lockett replacement in a few years' time. So has that over-the-top speed. Also very twitchy, very good player, yards after the catch wise. Love this fit, and it's just kind of adding into an already pretty good offense and adding more speed in that offense. I'm all for it. Then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles. Only 2 picks to go. Jahmyr Gibbs. This makes sense for so many different reasons. I think 62 is actually a really good spot to get a Jahmyr Gibbs. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott are both free agents this year, so you also get that value. Gibbs can be a plug-and-play starter there. At running back, can be cheaper. Then bringing back those guys. Also a fantastic receiver. He is kind of B-plus version of Dalvin Cook. Like you take prime Dalvin as an A. Jahmyr Gibbs to me is that B-plus version of that, and then like James Cook's kind of like the B- version of it. So I even think he's a little bit better than James Cook, who went in the second round last year, right around this spot. Actually, I think pick 62 is where James Cook went, either 62 or 63. So I think Gibbs is great value here, have an immediate role with Philadelphia, and allow them to kind of pick up right where they left off last year, and even get cheaper at running back. And then the last pick we'll talk about in this video, the Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about him earlier on, Michael Wilson. So whether this is Michael Wilson and maybe Cedric Tillman flipping places, comes down to what you think Tillman's going to do at Indy. I'm hoping that he has a good time, so that's why I had him go to the Giants. But you can totally flip these two. Possession wide receiver and a wide receiver class that's light on those guys. So 6'3" Tillman, 6'2" Michael Wilson, both over 200 pounds. I think they're going to have a lot of value because there's just not a whole lot of guys outside of those two built like that. But for Wilson, be the possession guy. Juju Smith-Schuster's hitting free agency, and also I'd rather that possession guy be on the outside versus the slot. Allows you to get more Kadarius Toney working in the slot, where I think he can be a true mismatch. He did a ton of that at Florida, running option routes, so let him and Pat Mahomes get that chemistry down. Toney on those option routes from the slot would be crazy hard to defend. So adding that true, I don't want to say number one, but that possession type, that X type that could be, the volume guy of sorts. He looked great at the Senior Bowl, which I think boosts his stock that much more, especially when considering he only played 26 games over 5 years at Stanford. So that was really kind of the first time he got a true showcase of his route running ability, his contested catch ability, basically him be able to put everything all together and have, decent enough quarterback play there at the Senior Bowl. That really wasn't what they were showcasing there. But I think Michael Wilson certainly helped the stock a ton and now has pole vaulted himself into this top 60 kind of conversation. I'm just outside of that, but like I said, he could go easily to the Giants where I had Cedric Tillman going. But that is going to do it for the round 2 portion of this updated 2023 NFL mock draft. I'll scroll across the top so you can see each pick one more time, but be sure to let me know what you think about each selection down below in the comment section, or if you just want to tell me who your favorite team is and what you think about the pick or picks that I gave them. Love to hear your feedback down below in the comment section. As long as you're not a jerk and you have something insightful to say, I will at least respond to or interact, react, heart, something like that to just about every comment down below in the comment section. So your thoughts won't go unheard, and I'd love to hear them down below in the comment section. Let's talk some football down below. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Like if you did, subscribe if you're new. Until tomorrow when we have the round 3 portion of this updated mock, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.